Elena isn't like the others. She carries more than just the weight of her duties. She carries something far more personal, something tied directly to him. Elena wasn't always working as a maid. Once upon a time, she had dreams of her own, ambitions that felt within reach, until life threw her curveballs she never saw coming. Now, here she is, silently navigating the cold marble floors of Alexander's mansion, while keeping a secret that grows heavier with each passing day. Her pregnancy wasn't planned, nor was the connection she once shared with Alexander before their worlds diverged completely. That fleeting moment between them, an encounter neither of them intended, has now become the thread pulling at both their lives, unraveling truths they aren't ready to face. Alexander's demeanor makes it easy to see why no one dares cross him. His piercing gaze seems to look right through people, dissecting their intentions before they even speak. Yet beneath that armor of authority lies a man burdened by loneliness, though he'd never admit it. He thrives on control because chaos terrifies him, and anything unpredictable threatens the carefully constructed life he's built. So when small signs start pointing to Elena acting differently, her subtle pauses, the way she avoids meeting his eyes, it unsettles him. Why does she seem so distant lately? Is she hiding something from him? The thought gnaws at him, though he tries to dismiss it as paranoia. Meanwhile, Elena wrestles with guilt and fear every single day. How do you tell someone like Alexander Hartwell that you're carrying his child without risking your livelihood? Or worse, your safety. It's not just about the baby growing inside her. It's about the emotions tangled up in this impossible situation. She remembers the night they crossed lines neither of them expected to blur. A rare moment where Alexander let his guard down, revealing a side of himself only she has seen. That memory haunts her now, not because it was wrong, but because it was real. It was human. And now, with the stakes higher than ever, she wonders if he'll see her as more than just an employee when the truth comes out. As days turn into weeks, tension simmers beneath the surface of their interactions. Alexander notices little things. He catches Elena resting her hand on her stomach when she thinks no one's watching, sees the exhaustion etched onto her face, despite her best efforts to hide it. There's an unspoken energy between them, one that crackles with unsaid words and buried emotions. He finds himself lingering near her, asking questions under the guise of concern for her work performance. Though deep down, he's searching for answers to questions he hasn't fully formed yet. Does she regret staying here? Does she resent him? Or is there something else entirely? For Elena, every glance from Alexander feels like scrutiny, like he's trying to piece together a puzzle she desperately wants to keep hidden. She knows she can't avoid him forever, especially since her condition will soon become impossible to conceal. But telling him means stepping into unknown territory, confronting the possibility that he might reject her, or worse, demand she leave immediately. Either way, her life as she knows it would change forever. Still, she can't shake the feeling that keeping this secret is slowly destroying her from the inside out. What makes this story so compelling isn't just the drama of a billionaire and his maid, it's the raw humanity woven into every interaction. Both characters are flawed, vulnerable, and shaped by circumstances beyond their control. Alexander's need for dominance stems from years of proving himself in a cutthroat industry, while Eleanor's resilience is born out of survival and sacrifice. Together, they represent two sides of the same coin, people yearning for connection, but held back by fear and pride. Their journey forces us to ask bigger questions about forgiveness, redemption, and whether love can truly transcend barriers, like class and power. And then there's the baby, the tiny heartbeat at the center of everything. Though unborn, this child already holds immense power over both parents, binding them together in ways neither anticipated. For Alexander, fatherhood represents a challenge unlike any boardroom negotiation. It demands empathy, patience, and selflessness, qualities he's spent years suppressing. For Elena, motherhood brings hope, but also uncertainty. Will she raise this child alone, or will Alexander step up and embrace the role fate has thrust upon him? These are the stakes driving the narrative forward, keeping viewers on edge as they wait to see what happens next. Just as tensions reach a boiling point, something unexpected occurs. A seemingly ordinary conversation takes a dramatic turn. Alexander, unable to ignore the nagging suspicion eating away at him, confronts Elena during a quiet evening in the mansion. "Is there something you're not telling me?" he asks, his voice low but laced with intensity. Elena freezes, caught off guard by the directness of his question. Her heart pounds as she struggles to find the right words, knowing this moment could change everything. Before she can respond, however, a sudden interruption throws them both off balance, leaving the question unanswered, for now. This cliffhanger leaves viewers hanging, desperate to know how Elena will navigate this precarious situation, and whether Alexander will rise to the occasion when faced with the truth. Will he lash out in anger, or will he surprise everyone, including himself, by showing compassion? The unresolved tension sets the stage for the next chapter, promising twists and turns that will test these characters in ways they never imagined. One thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same again, so buckle up because this story is just getting started, with secrets lurking in every corner and emotions running high. The collision course between Alexander and Elena promises to deliver unforgettable moments filled with heartbreak, revelation, and maybe even redemption. You won't want to miss what happens next. Elena stood frozen, her mind racing, as Alexander's piercing gaze bore into her. The interruption, a phone call from one of his business associates, gave her a brief reprieve. But she knew it was only a matter of time before the confrontation resumed. As Alexander stepped away to take the call, Elena exhaled deeply, clutching the edge of the counter for support. Her heart thudded in her chest, like a drumbeat counting down to an inevitable explosion. She had spent weeks rehearsing what she would say when this moment came, yet now that it was here, all those carefully crafted words felt hollow. How could she explain something so monumental to a man who rarely let anyone get close enough to truly know him? The weight of her secret wasn't just about the baby growing inside her. It was also tied to the tangled web of emotions between them. That night, the one they both tried to forget but couldn't. It hadn't been planned or logical. It happened during a charity gala hosted at Alexander's penthouse, where Eleanor worked behind the scenes, ensuring everything ran smoothly. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she had slipped out onto the balcony for fresh air, only to find Alexander there too. For once, he wasn't the intimidating CEO barking orders or brokering deals. He was quiet, almost vulnerable, staring out at the city lights with a look of weariness that mirrored her own. They talked, really talked, for the first time, their defenses crumbling under the weight of shared loneliness. One thing led to another, and by the end of the evening, boundaries were crossed that neither could undo. Now, months later, Elena found herself caught in a storm of guilt and fear. She didn't regret the connection they'd shared, because it reminded her that Alexander was human beneath his polished exterior. But she did regret not being honest sooner. Every day she delayed telling him, the harder it became. What if he saw her pregnancy as a betrayal? What if he accused her of trying to trap him? These thoughts haunted her, making sleep elusive and turning even the simplest tasks into Herculean challenges. Meanwhile, Alexander wrestled with his own demons. The more he observed Elena, the more certain he became that something was off. He prided himself on reading people, on anticipating their moves before they made them. Yet Elena remained an enigma, slipping through his grasp every time he thought he understood her. Was it paranoia, fueling his suspicions, or instinct? Either way, he couldn't shake the feeling that her distance wasn't just professional. It was personal. And then there was the nagging memory of that night on the balcony. He told himself it was a fleeting lapse in judgment, nothing more. But deep down, he wondered if it meant something deeper, something he wasn't ready to confront. As the days passed, small details began to add up. Elena avoided heavy lifting, claiming back pain. She ate lighter meals than usual, citing nausea. At first, Alexander dismissed these changes as unrelated quirks. But together, they painted a picture he couldn't ignore. Still, he hesitated to voice his suspicions outright. If he was wrong, he risked alienating her further. If he was right, well, he didn't want to think about what that might mean. Instead, he watched her closely, searching for clues while grappling with his growing unease. Their strained dynamic rippled through the household, affecting everyone around them. The other staff members noticed Elena's increasing isolation, whispering among themselves about what might be troubling her. Some speculated she was ill. Others assumed she was dealing with family issues. No one guessed the truth, not even Margaret, the head housekeeper who had always been kind to Eleanor. Margaret approached her one afternoon, concern etched on her face. "You've been quieter lately," she said gently. "If there's anything you need to talk about, I'm here." Elena forced a smile, brushing off the comment with vague assurances that she was fine. But Margaret's kindness only made her feel worse, adding to the burden of carrying such a heavy secret alone. Alexander's internal turmoil spilled over into his work life as well. Known for his razor-sharp focus, he found himself distracted during meetings, missing key details, and snapping at colleagues over minor mistakes. His assistant, Rachel, grew increasingly worried. "Is everything okay?" she asked cautiously, after yet another terse exchange. Alexander brushed her off, unwilling to admit that his mind was elsewhere. Or rather, on someone else. He couldn't afford distractions, not when his company was on the verge of closing a major deal. But no matter how hard he tried to compartmentalize, Eleanor's presence lingered in his thoughts, pulling him back to questions he couldn't answer. The tension reached a breaking point one evening when Alexander returned home earlier than expected. He walked into the kitchen to find Elena seated at the table, her hands resting protectively over her stomach. She looked up, startled, and for a moment, they simply stared at each other. The air crackled with unspoken words, thick enough to choke on. Finally, Alexander broke the silence. "We need to talk," he said, his tone firm but tinged with vulnerability. Elena nodded slowly, bracing herself for what was to come. What followed was a raw and emotional conversation, unlike any they'd had before. Elena confessed everything. The night they shared, the shock of discovering she was pregnant, her fears of telling him, and the overwhelming uncertainty of what lay ahead. Alexander listened intently, his expression unreadable as waves of emotion crashed over him. Anger, confusion, disbelief, they all surged within him, battling for dominance. When she finished speaking, the room fell silent again, the weight of her revelation hanging heavily between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Alexander exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he demanded, his voice low but laced with frustration. Elena flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "Because I was scared," she admitted softly. "Scared of how you'd react. Scared of losing my job. Scared of ruining your life." Her honesty hit him like a punch to the gut, forcing him to confront the reality of the situation. This wasn't just about him anymore. A child, a living, breathing piece of both of them, was coming into the world, whether he was prepared or not. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Alexander realized he had a choice to make. He could retreat into his usual armor of control and authority, pushing Eleanor away and demanding she handle things on her own. Or he could step up, embracing the chaos and unpredictability of fatherhood, despite his fears. It was a decision that would define not just his future, but the futures of Eleanor and their unborn child as well. But before he could respond, another unexpected twist threw everything into chaos. A loud knock echoed through the mansion, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. Someone was at the door, and whoever it was, they weren't leaving without answers. The knock at the door reverberated through the mansion, shattering the fragile tension between Alexander and Eleanor. Before either could react, the sound of hurried footsteps approached, and Margaret, the head housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, her face pale with worry. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, her voice trembling. "There's someone here to see you. They say it's urgent." Alexander frowned, irritation flickering across his face. "Who is it?" he asked sharply. Margaret hesitated before replying. "It's your brother, sir." Alexander stiffened, his jaw tightening. He hadn't spoken to his estranged younger brother, Daniel, in years. Not since their bitter fallout over family inheritance and differing visions for the future. The thought of seeing him now, especially under these circumstances, filled Alexander with dread. But before he could protest, Daniel strode into the room, his expression a mix of defiance and desperation. "We need to talk," Daniel said, his eyes darting briefly to Elena before locking onto Alexander. "Alone!" Elena instinctively rose from her seat, sensing the tension crackling in the air. "I'll give you some privacy," she murmured, but Alexander stopped her with a firm shake of his head. "No," he said firmly, surprising everyone, including himself. "Whatever this is, it can be said in front of her." For the first time, there was an unspoken acknowledgement that Elena wasn't just an employee anymore. She was part of whatever storm was brewing. Daniel hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but pressed on. "Fine," he muttered, pulling out an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This arrived for you today. It's from Dad's lawyer." Alexander's blood ran cold as he took the envelope, recognizing the official seal embossed on the corner. Inside was a letter detailing a clause in their late father's will, a condition neither of them had been aware of until now. According to the document, Alexander would lose control of a significant portion of the family estate unless he reconciled with Daniel within the next 6 months. Failure to do so would result in the assets being donated to charity. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Alexander clenched the paper tightly, his mind racing. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about legacy, pride, and the fractured relationship with the one person who shared his blood. As if sensing his turmoil, Elena spoke softly, breaking the silence. "Maybe this is a chance," she said, her voice steady despite her own anxiety. "A chance to fix things, not just with your brother, but with yourself." Her words hung in the air, simple yet profound, forcing Alexander to confront the walls he'd built around his heart. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, Alexander turned to Daniel. "Let's start over," he said, surprising even himself with the sincerity in his tone. Daniel blinked, caught off guard, but nodded cautiously. "Okay," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't a resolution. That would take time. But it was a beginning. With the immediate crisis averted, attention shifted back to Elena and the life growing inside her. Now that the truth was out, Alexander faced a new challenge. Stepping into the role of fatherhood, he knew it wouldn't be easy. Decades of prioritizing work over relationships had left him ill-prepared for the emotional demands of parenting. But looking at Elena, he saw not just a woman carrying his child, but someone who had shown him kindness and courage when he least deserved it. She had trusted him with her secret, and in doing so, had given him an opportunity to become someone better. Over the following weeks, Alexander began making changes, not just in how he treated Elena, but in how he approached life itself. He scaled back his workload, delegating responsibilities to trusted colleagues so he could focus on building a real connection with Elena and preparing for their child. They started attending prenatal appointments together, awkward at first, but gradually growing more comfortable in each other's presence. Slowly, they began to form a partnership rooted in mutual respect and understanding. As the due date drew near, Alexander found himself reflecting on how far he'd come. The possessive, controlling man who once ruled his empire with an iron fist was learning to let go, to embrace vulnerability and trust others. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy boy named Liam, he felt a surge of emotions he couldn't put into words. Holding his son for the first time, surrounded by Elena and Daniel, who had become a supportive presence in his life, Alexander realized something important. True strength didn't lie in dominance or control, but in love, forgiveness, and the willingness to grow. In the months that followed, Alexander continued to rebuild his relationships, both personal and professional. His reconciliation with Daniel strengthened their bond, proving that even the deepest wounds could heal with effort and patience. At home, he and Eleanor navigated the joys and challenges of parenthood together, finding solace in the little moments that made life meaningful. Though their journey hadn't been easy, it had brought them closer than either could have imagined. Looking back, Alexander understood that Liam's arrival had been more than just the birth of a child. It had been the catalyst for transformation. It had forced him to confront his flaws, reconnect with his humanity, and rediscover what truly mattered. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly have its ups and downs, he faced it with hope, knowing he wasn't alone. As the story concludes, viewers are left with a powerful reminder. Life's greatest challenges often lead to its most profound growth, whether it's mending broken relationships, embracing unexpected responsibilities, or simply learning to let go. The path to fulfillment begins with a single step, one driven by love, courage, and the belief that change is always possible.